ladies and gentlemen. So, as Irina said, we're going to spend some time today talking about the benefits of ERP, case for cloud, and so forth. But let me introduce quickly myself. As she said, my name is Yojek Grushkovняk. I'm Slovenian, live in Switzerland. And as you can see by my hairline, I spent too much time in the IT industry, right? So it's about 40 years since I embarked on the information technology journey. Been in a couple of roles, focused a lot on telecommunications industry, worked 16 years for Cisco Systems, but I was trained as a software engineer. My first job was programming ERP software for small and medium businesses. And a couple of years ago, I landed at SAP, where I lead the value advisory team for Central and Eastern Europe. What we do as a team, we fundamentally help customers understand the benefits and put together the business and value case for deployment of various software solutions that SAP provides, a justified investment, and then during usage actually monitor the impact and the effect that these investments have on their business. So that's long story short. So what I wanted to actually spend time talking today, let me see if this agenda is not very bright. We have 4 topics, but the objective of the session really is that I would like you help understand what are the key value drivers behind this standardized ERP concept, right? Why we need to deploy a modern ERP systems in today's business context. Number 2, what makes cloud deployments particularly attractive for customers, and then really look at the synergies between cloud, ERP and cloud, and what are potential next steps if companies are thinking about transforming and deploying the new modern ERP system, right? I hope the agenda is interesting enough for you to stay until the end. So if there are no violent objectives, I would propose that we dive right into it. So the power of one. Let's set the scene a little bit before we start talking about ERP and its role, right? An enormous amount of money is actually being spent these days on digital transformation, right? So this is one of our last probably 15, 20 years, this buzzword of digital transformation. It's ubiquitous across the industry, right? And despite spending serious amount of money, I mean, the forecast by IDC is that by 2027, almost $4 trillion will be spent in this area, right? Companies continue to increase the investments, right? And the reason why they do it, they actually see digital transformation as a differentiator from the competition. My personal view actually is that it's not that much of differentiator today. It's more like a table stakes, because if you're not digital, you probably will not live to see many years ahead. So the good news is I looked at some Ukrainian data, and I know due to the circumstances, the statistics from Ukraine are not perfect, but Ukraine seems to be on the bandwagon, right? Despite everything that's going on, organizations are trying to accelerate digitalization, right? More or less everybody has some sort of a digital transformation in their strategy, right? And they're investing money. I mean, again, I would say, given the circumstances, I think this is a valiant effort, and fundamentally it's an effort that will pay up in the long term. Now, we talk about digital transformation, and I'm a classically educated guy, so I kind of like using definitions, right? So when we talk about digital transformation, what we are talking about, number one, digital transformation is a process. It's not a one-time event, right? And what does it do? It's using technology-based capability, mainly digital, mainly IT, but other things as well, to continuously improve customer experience and lower unit costs. You know, all the companies fundamentally, company is a balancing act between delivering something for the customer and trying to reduce the unit cost to deliver it in the optimal manner, right? And with these two things, they're trying to create competitive advantage. The 2 points here are, it's a process which is fundamentally never done. It's a continuous improvement, continuous way. How do we find new technologies that can help us improve customer experience and lower unit costs, right? So that's the definition, right? And it shows in the results, right, that the companies that successfully transform deliver better results, right? So Boston Consulting Group did the research and actually showed that in terms of the revenue growth, right, the digitally transformed companies outpaced the non-transformed or laggards in digital transformation by 14 points, right? And in total value, total return, right, the delta, it's even bigger. It's actually double of those. McKinsey ran another study, right, and looking at the results by sector, and in a 5-year period from 2018 to 2022, independent of sector, right, all sectors showed that the digital leaders outperformed digital laggards by a significant margin. Of course, this depends a little bit on the sector and how much impact information technology and digital technologies have on the sector. So it's no surprise that insurance, which is fundamentally really handling the data, right, has a huge impact. Like the successfully digital transformed organizations were 6 times. They delivered 6.1 times higher total shareholder return in comparison to non-transformed. But even in energy and materials, which were, you can argue digital, maybe yes, no, it's like assets and material and stuff like that. Even there, the delta was 2.3 times. So digital transformation fundamentally matters. Now there's the flip side of the coin, right? If it matters, how come that so many digital transformations fail or don't deliver the results, right? So this is a study from McKinsey, right? 70% of complex large change programs don't reach their objectives. I think a year or two ago, Boston Consulting Group actually did their own research and came up with a number of 88%. So I decided not to show it, not to scare people off, right? But if this is happening, what are the reasons, right? And yeah, it is true that a lot of reasons fundamentally are sort of anchored in leadership and failed change management, right? So not having clear goals and not having executive sponsorship is one of the critical impediments. As well, it's this employee resistance and lack of engagement. And this really comes from failed change management, right? Not being able to explain to the employee population what is it in the transformation for them, how they will benefit of the change, and so forth. Because the other, of course, the quite obvious one is that, digital, so let's just focus on technology. Well, technology helps only if you deploy it, right? And if you drive change in the organization and so forth. And there is like the technical depth that plays a role, right? So given all that, ERP, it's not the cause or a major, it's not a major reason for failing digital transformation, but it can be quite a significant contributor. How ERP contributes to failure? I'm sorry. Couple of reasons, right? Number one, unflexible old system represents like an anchor to the past, right? So siloed applications, inflexibility, data that fits and doesn't fit. So it fundamentally can disable companies to move forward. Number one, the other one, we realize we need to do something with ERP, but we actually mismanage the ERP modernization, right? For reasons can be, I don't know, the budget overruns, business disruption, which is too big, the business resilience to change and so forth. So the third one, paving the cow path, right? It's imagine you have a nice field cow path, which is not suitable for anything, but you still put asphalt in it, right? So this basically means we are using ERP to sort of automate and things that are inadequate, automating inadequate processes and so forth. This will not help. Misalignment of goals, right? So you have mismatch between what business expects and what IT wants to deliver, right? Without a buy-in from business, as we've seen, leadership and leadership sponsorship and engagement, this will not fly. And last but not least, right, is the issue of data, right? As we digitalize, if we move the new digital world, we are basing fundamentally all these applications, all the stuff that we built on data. And if the data doesn't really represent a reality, the data is crappy, then we have a problem, right? It will lead on one side of false analytics, false assumptions, what we are going to do. In the worst case, actually going to lead to operational errors, right? It's going to lead us to ship stuff to wrong addresses and so forth, right? So these are a couple of things how ERP contributes to failure of digital transformation problems now. Now we mentioned ERP quite a few times, right? So let's define what ERP is. I'll borrow here the definition from our esteemed colleagues from Gartner, right? And Gartner basically says that the ERP, or enterprise resource planning applications, automate and support multiple administrative and operative business processes, right? So fundamentally, when we talk about ERP, we're talking about digitalizing and automating business processes across the entire portfolio. In short, if we take a look at good old Porter's value chain model, right? ERP is supposed to support and digitalize and automate the entire supply chain the entire value chain of primary activities, right? Starting from R&D all the way to delivering goods and servicing them, right? And all the secondary activities, right? So support activities that underpin the primary activities, right? So anything from sourcing, procurements, accounting, HR, information technologies, infrastructure, asset management, and so forth, right? So this is really the true scope of ERP, managing this entire stack. So the other word that I was using in the title of presentation, actually standardized ERP, then calls in for, okay, we understand what ERP is, but what do we mean by standardization, right? And let me explain that by using a model that was coined, again, probably in the 90s by Geoffrey Moore in one of his books, dealing with dinosaurs, or one of those. Anyway, Geoffrey Moore's model fundamentally says everything an organization does can be split into two groups, right? All the processes, all the activities. One group is a group which he called core. So these are all the activities that contribute to organization's competitive advantage, to its differentiation. So these are the things that fundamentally set you apart from the rest of the gang in the market, right? And all the other activities are contextual. So these are activities that you need to do, but you just need to do it because you do, like, tax accounting, right? Everybody loves tax accounting. Not really. Nobody, it's not going to give you any particular advantage, but you need to do it, right? So how do we sort of then work on these activities? For core, it's obvious. I'm sorry. So this is an area where organizations should fundamentally really focus, invest, innovate, figure out how do we differentiate, how do we make things different, right? And context really are the activities that, number one, you want to standardize. And standardization has now two roles. One, if you are a large organization, you want to standardize them across the entire organization, right? Imagine, like as I said, I worked for Cisco Systems, which is a global company, right? And standardization, we wanted every country, every operation to do things the same way. Why? Because variance, number one, costs money, and number two, it can cause problems, right? Because if things are not done in a coherent way. And the other way of standardization here is, so if these activities don't give me any particular competitive advantages, right? Why bother? It's the best thing I can actually do is do it as the best companies in the world are doing it. So implement global best practices. So that's the way. And again, see, to illustrate, when I had discussions with customers in workshop, right? So then you see that people don't really grasp immediately the difference. I asked them, so I worked at Cisco that time, and I basically asked the question, so what is manufacturing as activity for Cisco? Is it core or is it context? So let's see if you guys are awake. The ones who believe it's context, raise hands. Let's see how many hands do we get. Єдина, can you help me count hands if there are any? So manufacturing, Cisco Systems, you know who Cisco is. The small little dinky producer of internet equipment, right? If there wouldn't be Cisco, there would be no internet. Haha. No hands.
None at the
So
moment, no.
no worries. So maybe it's too early, not enough coffee. In principle, for Cisco, manufacturing was context, right? The core was R&D and engineering, creating new devices that will move data around the world faster, more efficient. There were other companies that were specialized in cranking out electronic things, Jabil, Solectron, Celestica, I don't know the names, right? And the company just outsourced that. Two benefits, right? These guys were able to do these things for a lower cost, right? And number two, when crisis hit, like there was crisis, the dot-com bubble in 2001, then crisis 2008, we were able to, Cisco was basically able to just cancel the contracts, right? And pay some penalty, but still. While a lot of Cisco's competition were sitting on assets that were just generating costs and doing nothing, right? So it's really important that you internalize, you understand in what category what activity fits, and then you treat it accordingly. And talking about standardization on global best practices in finance, I'll give you an example, right? E.ON, you guys probably know E.ON, right? It's a German energy giant, global company, right? 450 companies worldwide. They managed to standardize 96 of the processes in their finance to SAP standards, right? So one of the SAP claims is, well, if more than basically all top 500 companies in the world to run our software, there probably is, we can call the way the processes are implemented as SAP as a global best practice, right? So if even an organization like E.ON was able to basically standardize 96% of their processes across the entire organization, I think other organization can do that as well. Right. Now, what we said is now what ERP systems basically do, we always talk about ERP helps organization. Well, reality is there are people organizations, right? And these people face different challenges, right? So they run different parts of the value chain model, right? And focus on different problems like CFO, profitability, cash flow, working capital, purchasing officer, getting the optimal contracts, sustainability, value chain stability, operating officer, manufacturing, supply chains, delivering on time, HR, right stuffing, right talent, right knowledge, and so forth, right? And this functions don't exist in vacuums, right? They fundamentally need to collaborate. They need to be interconnected, right? For example, the CEO delivering on time means I need to schedule and manage manufacturing. However, I also need to understand if my supply chain is ready and if I have enough workers. So collaboration with the purchasing, the procurement, and HR is critical. So the ERP system does not just need to automate the individual functions, but it needs to cross-connect these functions to enable this, what we would call the mega processes like order to cash, right? Or idea to product and so forth, right? So how do ERP systems do that? It's basically today, if we look at the ERP systems, they have a couple of components, right? One component are the applications. This is this visible thing that actually people use, that they compose typically of transactional systems, right? As they would call it. Supporting functions like finance, manufacturing, planning, scheduling, and so forth, right? So what happens here is that these applications, as people are using them, generate the next component of the ERP system, data, right? And somebody, 20 years ago, when data deluge started to become a reality, so we were generating more and more data, right? Oracle was actually doing a study. I'm not sure they do it. They still do it, but that showing this exponential increase in the amount of data being generated globally, right? And we were really talking 15 years ago about the gazillions, and you can imagine what's actually happening today, right? What data enables us to do fundamentally is not just run the transactional systems, but actually get the insight, right? actually generate insights, to understand what is going on, to predict things or to optimize things and so forth, right? And this insight and this optimization part, right, now brings in the third component of an ERP system, which is the AI, right? I mean, AI, it's not entirely new to ERP, right? I would say the machine learning was used in ERP for years, for example, to do automatic document recognition, right? So you reading and entering scanned invoices and so forth, right? That fundamentally was done by machine learning, right? Which is a section of AI. However, the new developments in AI, plus the developments, of course, of computing power, right, that's available, brought to forth the large language models or small language models, if you want, for controlled environments that enable AI agents that fundamentally not only produce the analysis, but can actually be authorized to act on behalf of the humans, right? So automating purchasing, automated, I mean, the simple one, it's automated chatbots for support and so forth, right? So these are now the three components that you can see that sort of exist in most ERP systems today. So if we look at an architecture of an enterprise, of an ERP system today, and I'll put it this way, I'm using a model of SAP Business Suite. Microsoft Dynamics, Oracle, they have similar pictures. I mean, the devil's in the detail, how well things are integrated, at what level certain components play. But in principle, the construction is as follows, right? We have this core cloud ERP that has a data management module, and in SAP it's called business transformation platform, but some sort of a mechanism that, number one, keeps all the applications together, right, that are LOB or function specific, but also provides an interface to other applications that can extend the ERP system. So that is our core, right? It's a cloud ERP with functionality that spans all necessary LOBs, right? Now, nobody's really smart enough. So, it's like if you look at a company like SAP, we do a lot of core things, but there are a lot of specialized things that somebody would call niche, but still needs to be done, right? And say we have specific applications. The ERP vendors usually have a ton of partners that develop really industry-specific solutions that tie into the ERP platform. You see, if you're a mining company, you probably need a ton of specific applications that manage the mining process. I mean, and these can be integrated with the ERP system with the APIs. Now, the other piece of that is there are also tools that we call the business transformation management tools that help you, on one side, monitor, do the process mining, really understand how well the processes are working, and the tools that help you to actually drive the transformation, either the enterprise architecture tools or the tools like user onboarding that fundamentally help people guide in using the applications and optimizing their adoption rates, right? And as we mentioned before, on top of the ERP systems, you have the all today more and more present AI, right? Again, a couple of components that are there. You can have on top of the applications that support different lines of businesses, you may have what we would call the AI agents, right? Financial agents that, for example, monitor things, close, automatically match invoices with payments and so forth. HR agents like that scan and analyze CVs from the applicants, right? That generate automatically a job posting based on the job description and so forth. And above them all, right, what you usually have is an orchestrator of agents, like, and an user interface to the entire system that provides this natural language interface, right? So, as I said, this is the architecture or a structure of SAP Business Suite, and probably, the Oracles, Microsofts, and others have something similar. Now, the question is, okay, we have this thing, right? So how do we generate value through ERP? And this is just one example, right? So ERP generates value by giving companies new business capabilities that they either didn't have before, or these are business capabilities that are enhanced with a new functionality, right? And the ERP can impact value in various ways. It can basically help with the revenue growth, right? It can help perform mergers and acquisitions quicker, right? It can support the optimal on-the-spot pricing and so forth. It can help with profitability, right? By optimizing cost, optimizing purchasing across the supply chain and so forth. It can look at and support increased asset efficiency. This is, for example, really interesting for manufacturing and utilities and other companies which are asset heavy, right? By helping them run the maintenance, proactive maintenance, or optimize the life cycle. And then there's a bunch of things which are related to really strategic positioning, right? Understanding and optimizing a sustainability footprint, right? So what is our CO2 footprint? How do we position company in the sustainability sphere? How do we enable processes that are tied to our support for communities and so forth, right? So the value that ERP generates can be sliced and diced in many ways. But again, the core idea here is the ERP should give organizations new business capabilities that will enhance the work, the way they work, right? So a couple of examples of this value creation, and I was really intentional because usually what I hear is ERP, BMW, big organizations, then they can afford SAP or this big ERP systems. We can't. We are small. So the examples I want to basically show are of the organizations that actually are small and medium, right? So Budvar, the Czech guys, 600 employees, 140 million euro, right? And they fundamentally dramatically increased the back office productivity, for example, by moving to a cloud-based ERP system, right? And what I actually like is the quote that the ERP enabled them to dramatically increase business transparency, right? And operate more smoothly across all the lines. Yanmar, it's a smaller company. Revenue-wise, they're huge, 7 billion, but they have 300 employees, right? And same story, right? Reducing the time for business processes, right? Because they are large in revenue, at 7 billion, 20% increase in working capital means quite a lot of money and so forth. But again, the message is standardized and efficient systems and processes. Again, process efficiencies. Last but not least, this is really small, right? The Sabo, they 25 million, 90 employees. They still went for a cloud ERP. Increase the throughput of orders, reduce manual effort, right? And again, process automation that save them people, right? So it doesn't really matter the size of the organization. A modern ERP system fundamentally can help organization to run their operations smoothly. Now, I will do a preemptive thing and address the elephant in the room, as you would say usually, right? Now, let's go back to Gartner, right? Some people actually raise the question, can we, okay, the SAP, this all uniform, all-in-one ERP systems, I think I could be better off by using the various products, right? And actually, Gartner sort of supports this, saying, well, the postmodern ERP, it's technology strategy. It's not anymore a set of applications that does all the automation with appropriate levels of integration and balanced benefits of the vendor-delivered integration instead of flexibility and agility. So what Gartner's actually talking about here is two concepts, right? On one side, we have best of suite, as I would call it, right? So you have an integrated system of applications that fundamentally cover the entire value chain with extensions that can be provided by specialized partner for the areas which are not covered by the core ERP, or what we can do, we can build we can build an ERP system ourselves by, I don't know, taking maybe finance and core from SAP, then Coupa for procurement, I'll take Workday for human capital management, I will take, I don't know, Salesforce for CRM and so forth, right? Now, in principle, both concepts solve the problem of automating business and operations processes. However, on the left side, you actually need yourself integration on the application level, integration of data, right? So if we summarize what the basic difference between the two approaches are, we can summarize that in a couple of dimensions, right? If we just start with the user experiences, when you do best of breed and each app is from a different vendor, you will not really have a consistent user experience, look and feel, same way of managing things, right? Workflows, right? As we said, a lot of processes actually go across these silos, the vertical silos. No? Order to cash, right? Order is generated by sales, approved by finance. Then it needs to go to manufacturing that looks at the supply chain, manufactures the whole thing, puts it in storage again, goes to shipping, logistics, the invoices issued, goes to finance and so forth. So a lot of processes are not neatly packaged in their own silos, right? So we need to have this mechanism that manages the workflow end to end, right? And again, this in the disjointed system, this is slightly more difficult, right? More different, right? Data domain models, either aligned or separate, right? Security and identity management, well, you manage it in one place or multiple, and so forth, right? So while it can be argued that the best of breed gives you flexibility and maybe slightly better performance, more features, you need to weigh that against the other option of a tighter integration, right? Let me just do an analogy. I don't know, this is now my first attempt to do an analogy. We all use smartphones, right, today, and we can say the smartphone became our little dinky ERP that manages our life, right? So it's a platform, and we have multiple applications on this platform that we use to run our day-to-day life. So imagine Spotify. You like the music, Spotify tells you, oh, the band that you're listening to which music you're listening to is coming to town, right? Excellent. Now I want to buy a ticket. There is some integration, right? So actually there's a button in Spotify that you can press. It's going to launch the Ticketmaster app. You can buy the ticket. Fantastic, right? So this is sort of integrated, right? You go to different app, but fine. Now what happens? You get the ticket, right? You get a ticket usually by email, right? Cool. So now if the Ticketmaster is smart, it's going to include the ICS file, so you can press on the icon and it's going to be added to calendar. You can then add up you can add the location of the concert in the calendar entry, and if you're like on Apple, that is going to pull the geolocation from the maps and so forth. So there is some level of integration, but fundamentally, it's still disjointed. It requires relatively lot of manual interventions, right? Why? Because, yeah, each application, while it works on the same platform, has its own data in the cloud. The things, there are really Chinese walls between them, right? And they have difficulty integrated. Now, imagine that the smartphones would be really smart, right? So the prerequisite for that is that fundamentally the data, it's shareable across all, is shared across all the applications, right? So that's sort of prerequisite. And that these applications are now extended with the AI agents. So the scenario I described before, as soon as you, for example, you click on the tickets, as soon as the tickets are booked, right, the agent, the ticketing agent talks to navigation, talks to the calendaring app, and everything that needs to be, so things get placed in the right buckets, right? And the navigation, working with the calendar, actually knows that on, I don't know, Saturday at this time you need to drive to the concert. It's going to tell you, send you a notification, right? Now, extension to this would be, well, because it knows that you need to drive, it can monitor the weather application, right? And say, oh, it's raining, you need to depart half an hour earlier, right? So we see totally different level of automation if we have a common data pool and a set of agents that can actually talk to each other, right? So this is really the vision of, I would say, like a unified ERP system where the data is consolidated in a coherent way, and the AI agents are able to talk to each other to optimize optimize processes and do activities across the boundaries, right? So, as I said before, the idea of the ERP is solve individual challenges while really unleashing this collective power, right? Again, example, I was using the example of Spotify tickets and everything that goes around it. We can apply this example like into a manufacturing company, right? Where the manufacturing process notices that a disruption in supply chain, reaches out to the procurement agents to find an alternative supplier, order stuff, and smoothes this disruption out, right? So that's really the power of a unified ERP system running with a bunch of AI intelligence on top of it, right? It's really empowering both individuals to do their jobs better, but also empowering the entire organization to optimize the processes across the functional boundaries. So any questions on the ERP side, right? Why, what's the value and so forth? Okay, now I'm either boring you to death or topic it's not that interesting, but let's see if why cloud would be an more interesting session. So we can deploy ERP system in various ways, right? Most of you, if you're from the IT and the ERP space, are familiar with the traditional on-premise world, right? So we buy a bunch of servers, we have our IT department, we have our data center, we buy licenses, well, then after licenses, we need to pay still some maintenance costs, but that's the way we operate and we run it, right? The other way a lot of organizations are running this operation today is basically saying, oh, well, but data center costs money and it's really hard to make it resilient, right? So if business resilience is one of your gigs, well, okay, I need 2 data centers now, right? Because which are geographically apart. So in case I have a disaster in one, I can recover into the other and so forth. Costs money. So one of the tendencies is that, okay, I keep my on-premise model in terms of the upgrades and managing the licenses and application, but I move my infrastructure to one of these global cloud providers, I don't know, Amazon, Azure, Google, you outsource Kyndryl, whoever, right? You solve part of the problem, the rest, it's still managed by the user, right? And there's a third way that ERP systems get deployed, which basically is it's full cloud, where ERP is delivered in a software as a service model, right? Which basically means the only thing a customer needs to do is application management service. So assigning user roles and basically managing the application. Everything else is taken care by the vendor for a monthly or annual subscription fee, right? So these 3 models exist today, still deployed, but there are a couple of benefits of the cloud-based model, right? And these benefits at the end of the day are, number one, there's one contract, one SLA to manage, right? If you look at the governance, it's usually overlooked, but governance represents a substantial cost in IT, right? And one contract, one SLA, it's easier to manage like with a couple of those, right? If we look at, for example, I'm sorry, I don't know where. If we look at the license costs, right? So here, yeah, you have one SLA, you got rid of the SLA for multiple hardware components, but you still need to manage the infrastructure. You need to have networking costs and so forth, right? So this is one of the advantages. The other one, basically, you get the full ERP scope. So instead of a hodgepodge of applications, everything is scope, high security, compliance, and performance. Security, it's an interesting component here, right? Because at the end of the day, the cybersecurity incidents are more and more frequent, right? And the cloud security doesn't mean the incident cannot happen, but what happens is once the problem is identified, all the user of a cloud system get the benefit of patching it up. If you're running that on premise, well, you're up on your own, right? You need to fundamentally continuously monitor what's happening in security space and then do the upgrades and patches as required. And last but not least, right, the predictable total cost of ownership, right? It's a subscription base, right? So I'm paying X amount of money per user per month. And while in the other instances, well, the license fee is predictable, maintenance fee, yeah, it's predictable, but other costs depend. Like if you run your own data center, what's happening with the energy costs? So will this increase? What's the happening with the maintenance costs for all my infrastructure and so forth? Right? Again, the whole management cost is not negligible. So where is the world going, really, right? And Irina, I have a question. Where is my this thing with the cameras and participants? Have I removed it from main screen, or it's on the main screen?
No, it's all good.
It's all good.
No, we
Fantastic.
are here. We're all here.
No, fantastic. I know you're here. It's just my setup got rearranged after I dialed in again, and
all good.
I'm not really sure. Okay, so where's the world going? Right. So the Panorama Consulting actually does annual the state of ERP report, something like that. And the tendency is quite visible, right? Their list, their most recent one from 2025, 25% of respondents still run ERP on premise. 75 are actually has already moved to the cloud. So this number was steadily increasing for the past X years, right? Now, if we look at the cloud population, right, 72% really today is using the ERP as a software as a service, and about 28 actually use cloud as hosted, like managed service, like the infrastructure as a service model, right? So the tendency really is shifting towards deploying ERP as a standardized cloud-based software as a service solution. Why would that be, right? Now let's look at some characteristics. Whenever we deploy a software product or an ERP system or whatever in this fashion, we basically have two phases, right? We have this migration phase, implementation phase, and then we have the phase of the operations, right? And the business value, well, it dips initially, but then we start to recovering it, right? Now the traditional model on premise, right? Basically, we gain some benefits, and then over time, we maintain what it is, right? We maintain the current state. Upgrades, well, not really sure. They take time. They risk a business disruption. So I will not really do the upgrades that often and so forth. So honestly, from the SAP experience, right, from some really large customers, they were updating system every 2-3 years, right? What does that mean? Well, that means that you miss on a lot of new functionality that becomes available with each software release. The IaaS guys, right? They start adopting the cloud mindset that, okay, I don't need to manage everything by myself, but no, applications I will still do, right? So while they gain certain operational flexibility by moving to a cloud infrastructure, in terms of the software performance and new features, they are still usually behind software as a service. Now, option 3, cloud ERP, which basically we also call the future built mindset, basically says, so let's use it as software service. There are two implications, right? The transition actually may be a little bit more disruptive, right? While, for example, the tradition to this infrastructure as a server mindset really implies like the brownfield migration, lift and shift from the existing situation on premise to cloud. The migration to software as a service can usually imply like the greenfield migration. It requires a little bit more upfront investment, It's not that much about money. It's more about the change management and really adopting your process, the company's processes to the global best practices, right? But long-term benefits are huge, right? Benefits fundamentally come from really much faster adoption of innovation and this continuous upgrades, which are fundamentally invisible because they are done on the system level, right? Also important thing is that there is this shift from capital investment, which is really characteristic for an on-premise and partially for the IIS world. Here we fundamentally shift from total cost of ownership to total cost of innovation. We fundamentally move from the CapEx to OpEx, to operational costs. So the benefits really of the cloud ERP cloud ERP delivers benefits across the three core competencies that were sort of identified by McKinsey, right? That are needed for digitally advanced organizations, right? So one characteristic is this accelerated digital transformation. We said digital transformation, it's never done, right? It's fundamentally a continuous process of optimizing your operations, right? And the cloud-based thing, the ERP delivers like this competency in three outcomes. Number one, speeds up innovation. So you can adopt new features, new things that come up with new versions of ERP faster. It enables intelligence in the process, and last but not least, right, empowers the business users to innovate, right? The other thing that happens is that unlocks the agile operating model within IT, right? Because you get rid of managing your technology stack, you can now redeploy these IT resources to the activities that create value for the business, right? Not just keeping the lights on, right? The other thing is as you migrate to cloud ERP, the vendor that's going to and vendors partners that are going to help you, they have methodologies that can fundamentally help you in the transition process, ensuring the success, right? And last but not least, as we said, the predictable TCO fundamentally and the cloud's nature of scaling up and scaling down relatively easily, right? Help you optimize the cost, right? And really align with the business need. Last but not least, business resilience component, right? By shifting to cloud, you get rid of a ton of technical debt, weird customizations of processes that happen because somebody said, well, we are doing this way for 20 years, we need to keep doing it without really explaining why. It fundamentally improves security because it's embedded, right? It's embedded with the cloud and the cloud provider services, right? And simplifies the governance, as I already said, right? Some examples of this thing, right? So if we look at acceleration, right? When Hitachi made the transition, right? They accelerated the time to upgrade by 18 times. So instead of doing upgrades, as I mentioned, like every couple of years, they were able now to do it like biannually, right? And they got rid of a ton of ERP add-ons that they had before, which created what we call an SAP Clean Core, which again facilitates this faster adoption of new things like automation, intelligence of business processes, right? Accenture manages to fundamentally do automatic clearing on invoices with 54% clearing rate, 67% accuracy of machine learning, and basically where it proposed this is a one-touch interaction, right? The AI, or actually this is the machine learning, the early version of AI. When AI was not sure, most of the things will result with single click with human intervention, basically asking the question, is this conversion correct? Yes, it is, let's go, right? And the other example is with this low code or no code programming capabilities that are usually inherent in systems like that, right? Users can create new applications, right? So the PIF-PAF, the users of this, the business side of the company went up with a new mobile app in a span of 3 weeks, right? And so forth. If we look at the agile operations, right, we can usually really talk a substantial reduction of the TCO of the costs. As I was preparing for the webinar, I was coming across cases where, for example, we only need 2 days to prepare for the upgrade and so forth. So fundamentally, it gives business this ability to move from to new versions really, really quickly. And again, when we talk about technical depth, there is a lot of benefits that can be really qualified. I mean, if you get rid of technical debt, you fundamentally, on one side, reduce your cost of maintaining the code, which is there for obscure reasons, and that feeds back into faster innovation, right? If we look at the simplified governance, less contracts, less money spent on application monitoring, and so forth and so forth. So basically, shifting to software as a service delivers a ton of benefits on top of the benefits which are delivered by a cloud ERP system, right? And that, so you can see from the statistical data, that's where the world is actually slowly moving. Any questions now around on-premise cloud? Any violent disagreements with the findings? Still all quiet. Okay, let's see if we have some more interaction at the end. So let's sort of start recapping, right? So the ERP, I showed you one view of how ERP delivers value, right? And I was really showing you the view of this generation of this direct economic value, right? This is achieved through process efficiency, process effectiveness, right? Now, there are a couple of other components where ERP delivers value. Fundamentally, it can enable strategic initiatives of the organizations, right? From faster expansions to new areas, faster business model transformation, right? If you have your ERP ready and able, you can relatively fast go into various digital businesses and so forth, right? Quicker revenue capture, accelerated times to collect revenues and so forth, right? Number two, better shareholder experience, right? For customers, it's kind of obvious. A good ERP system with a solid customer front end will deliver better experience, not just in terms of enabling you making a better website or mobile buying experience, but also by providing like the insights where the order is and so forth, right? It creates also better experience for the employees through a unified interface so they can interact with various functions, with various functionalities that they need. But at the end of the day, suppliers and partners benefit as well, right? Because the solid ERP system can enable you to expand the supply chain basically to organizations you collaborate with, to exchange orders in an electronic format, to actually even with AI to automate the entire ordering process as you need to build more products, you need to deliver various things. So I would actually add on the stakeholder experience also the shareholders, because the solid ERP system and well-implemented one will deliver more transparency into the business, increasing the confidence of the shareholders that the business is on the right track, right? And attract potentially more investments, right? There are components of ERP system that can address the sustainability question, right? So really help organizations manage their environmental impact, right? Like to really understand where you are, how to get to net zero, right? Objectives, if you want. How do you actually manage the whole ESG front, right? And last but not least, right? A cloud-based ERP system provides this resilience and risk management, right? You don't need to worry, do I have a redundant data center? How do I manage in case of disruption and so forth, right? Addressing this VUCA, like vulnerability, uncertainty, and ambiguity and crisis and ambiguity component, right? I think this fifth, risk resilience, is potentially particularly relevant to Ukraine and the situation you guys are in, right? So having the backend systems run safely somewhere where it cannot be touched by the acts of the enemy, it's actually it could fundamentally be beneficial, right? So this is how the value is delivered, right? Now, that's how value is manifested. Now, the value is actually derived, as we mentioned, on the ERP suite side by applications, cohesive data management, and artificial intelligence, right? And these things, right, working together actually reinforce each other. So as you use more, you use applications more, you generate more data, and this data fundamentally provides additional input to AI and to analytics to basically understand your business better, but also to optimize how the processes work, feeding back into the application improvements on the long term, right? So this is really one. We call it the flywheel. You know, this concept of flywheel, where the more energy you put, the more momentum you create. This is exactly what's happening with this combination. In a similar way, right? Cloud delivery reinforces these components, right? We have an ERP system which is apt to standards, right? So global standards, global best practices that allow you to run your business in the same way the best companies in the world run. Cloud delivery provides you with a ton of additional benefits, as we said: faster time to innovation, faster upgrades, better business resiliency, and free up your IT staff to do things which are actually important for the organization, leading to more innovation, right? And again, we see these three things reinforcing each other as they go. So in a nutshell, fundamentally, cloud-based ERP, so cloud and ERP together, the result is like 1 and 1. It's actually much greater than 2. Right? So now, another strategic component, which we already touched base on, right? And I will just reiterate, and I actually find it one of the most important ones, is this ability of ERP system to help you manage your business in a smarter way. As mentioned before, things change, right? And we need to focus on core. Processes will change. There's certain things that are your core today may actually move into context later on, right? So you may, if you're a manufacturing company and you find organizations that help you, that actually do this thing better, but you still have like an edge in product design, you may want to do that, right? You basically have a lot of, for example, fashion companies, which completely outsource the actual manufacturing of clothes, but the design part and brand and marketing, it's at their core. And as you move these things, in the IT, we can say, well, now IT, our core was keeping the lights on. And when you decide that's not my core anymore, because it adds no business value, just ensures that the business run. And there might be professional organizations that run data centers better than we do, then you can actually move that out and repurpose the resources that you have freed to actually focus on what is important, right? To me, actually, this is probably the most important thing of deployment of a standardized ERP system and migrating to cloud. As I mentioned, it's easy to understand it in IT, right? Instead of managing the infrastructure, taking care that air conditioning works and so forth, the IT staff can focus on delivering business value, of developing things and application, analytics, insights that would really make a difference for business. But even in other functions, optimizing or automating your finance and accounting functions frees up people to work on analytics, to provide better insight to the leadership team, and so forth. Right? So this, if nothing else, I would really like you to internalize this and start thinking, if I migrate to a cloud-based ERP, what can I actually do better? Not only that I can run my business better in accordance to global standards, if you go global best practices, but how can I then use the resources I'll free up to actually make my business better? So this brings us really towards the end of my 1 hour tirade, and I would just wrap up by saying, I mean, there's no discussion anymore, right? The digital transformation and consequentially transformation of how we support business with our IT functionalities and ERP included, it's not optional anymore. There's a gazillion of studies that fundamentally show that organizations that have good digital infrastructure and have managed to actually transform, so also they nail down the change management part of the whole story, are outperforming the rest of the organizations, right? Again, an example study, you have a reference below, 70% higher EBITDA across multiple functions between transformational winners and laggards, right? Now, how do we do the transformation right based on the list of failures, right? And these 5 rules basically are true both for digital transformation and for ERP migration or transformation or ERP modernization, whatever you want. The fundamentally 5 rules really are like, number 1, it's a business project, never an IT one. Even though ERP modernization also should be with IT, no, it impacts the business and business needs to buy into it, right? Number 2, if you remember on the slide where we discussed the reasons for failed projects and digital transformations, one of the elements was a lack of available talent and knowledge, right? And it turns out that organizations usually do not have all the knowledge for a successful transformation. So choosing the right partner to help you on the journey, it's important. And it's not just selecting the right ERP vendor, it's also selecting the right partner that's going to help you implement, right? Number 3, be happy with phased approach, right? So boiling the ocean really doesn't work. In my old employer, for example, we had a rule that no IT project can take more than 6 months. If it takes more than 6 months, it needs to be broken down in a more manageable chunks, right? So don't try to boil the ocean. Do it in phases. Identify the area which is what we would call the low-hanging fruit, right? Which is basically easy to implement and has a big impact. Do it and then move to the next line. Because what does that? It also helps you get the buy-in in the organization for change. Number 4 is basically go to cloud. I mean, the benefits of being on a cloud platform, at least from not just my opinion, but also from all the research statistics that are out there, far away out the pain that is going to be caused by the transition. Yeah? And as I mentioned, the pain of the transition is that if you really go pure software as a service, you need to change the way you do business. You need to adapt to the global best practices, right? But on the long run, definitely worth it. And last but not least, there's a change management imperative. I mean, you need to lead the change. Technology is always the easy part. I mean, easy, not easy, but it's always way easier than the people part, right? This is probably not a question.
Sorry, corrected.
Yeah, no worries. So as I said, the change don't forget the change management. And as I said, the phased approach actually can help you with the change management. If you fundamentally select the business area that is willing to change, you low-hanging fruit, so project at high value, low risk, you do it, this will create buy-in across the organization, right? So these are really like the 5, I would say, points that should help you on the journey, right? Now, complex, well, yeah, could be, but if you use the process, right, by really understanding why you do it, that gives you your raison d'etre, this French says, you align vision and strategy to the technology case, you build the case, and the building the case, it's really understanding where the value is going to come from. Yes, it's a business case, it's ROI, all these things, but identifying areas that will deliver the most value, it's a critical one to plan the path forward, to fundamentally say, these are the things where we'll get the most value. Let's implement them first, and then build on the success of this one, right? Plan the path forward, again, do it in phases. Big bangs carry high risk, and then really focus on delivering the value, measuring the value that is being delivered by what you have done. So if you build the case in the right way to really understand how the changes will deliver value, you already have a foundation to measure and understand how this value is delivered. Now, last but not least, right, I talk about how the digital winners are moving ahead from the laggards, right? And these new technologies like cloud and AI, according, for example, to McKinsey, they will create an enormous value potential. McKinsey is talking about trillions. And if you want to participate in this value creation, you need to be digitalized. You need to complete the digital transformation, which includes a proper ERP system that will enable all the good things that can come from digital transformation. Scary prospect, yeah. A lot of change, yes. But as good old Winston Churchill said, to improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often. So don't be afraid of change. The tools, technologies are there. They're also partners to help you on the journey. And with that, I would say thank you very much for listening, and open to question.